playfulness and curiosity.
This new superpower called persuasion.
There are the rules of the world, and then here's the rules for us.
What does rich mean?
Stories and wisdom.
Welcome to the Stories and Wisdom podcast, where we explore the moments that shape how we grow, lead, and live. Today, we are joined by Hilke Faber, CEO of the Growth Leaders Network and author of Taming Your Crocodiles and various other books. With roots in organizational transformation, Hilke helps leaders shift from reactive patterns to more grounded, conscious presence. And I know you also have a very well-followed podcast, so really excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Hilke.
I'm very happy to be here, Pradeep. Always happy to have any conversations with you about anything, really. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Very kind of you. Our first segment, and we have 4 segments on the podcast. Our first segment is called Memoir Moments. In this segment, we usually bring our guests in and then rewind time a little bit and talk about something from the past. For you, I wanted to have you think about a story that shifted the way you lead or how you define growth in the context of how that origin story come about. Is there something that you want to share in your memoir where the origin story of what you're currently doing started?
Yes, it was a dream that I had. I was in my 20s, I think fresh from grad school or maybe somewhere in grad school. Because I remember sharing this with a good friend of mine from India about this dream. And this dream was that we're all born into half circles. And each person has a different place in this half circle. And every person in a half circle has their right place. There's no better or worse because it's part of a circle. And in the dream, it was clear that I was born in one of these many infinite half circles, but kind of at the edge of the half circle. And so my job was partly to help orient the half circle, at least that's what it felt like, towards something that felt like unifying. And so I thought about that dream many times. And it set me on a path of looking for the connection or connectedness between everything and everyone. It made me curious about why these people, like when I was a young person, and the other side of the planet looking different from me. Are they really different? When I'm living or working on the street in New York, why is it that when I feel tired, I see lots of tired people? And when I feel very energetic, I see a lot of energetic people. And so that started to plant a seed. I didn't know what to do with that so much as it was a strategy consultant at the time, which to me felt more like organizing people, helping organizing thought around difficult challenges, big challenges, around something that connected us towards a cogent outcome. And then, I discovered meditation, almost was a monk at some point about 20 years ago, then started this work of coaching and team and culture development. And in that path and on that path, for me, the inspiration is always to help people inside of themselves to become more coherent, where all the different, often fragmented parts, fears, values, preferences, growing up, whatever it is, starts to work in harmony. So we have a sense of unity within ourselves, which creates strength, which creates truth, which creates clarity. And also to create that, help to create that between people in teams, where people can have the difficult conversations, and then in whole organizations. And these days, I'm getting a little older, where I feel like the end of my trajectory is also in sight. I think I'm 53, maybe I'll live to 100, maybe 125, but the end is in sight in some way. I look at our society and I see increasing fragmentation and often a celebration of the fragmentation and incivility. And I'm working towards how to bring people back together. And now, these days, that also includes nature and climate. So I do a little work on that, because that's part of our, you could say, society on capital S as well. So, yeah.
So you described half circle. Can you go a little bit on why that shape? How did half circle come to being? And then you're also talking about trajectory. And I feel like there's something there that I want you to touch on a little bit more.
Great question. So the dream came to me as like a painting that I get to look at, even though I'm also the author of the dream. And so when I think about that, why did I author a half circle? Well, because it's openness. It's openness to the infinity of the experience. Like, I think that's another good life lesson for me. Because of my insecurities I have looked for security in knowing the answer. So I've always been a seeker. It's like, oh, no, this is it. And a half circle suggests that it's always open, it's always unfinished. And there's harmony in that too.
There's some deep thought in that. That's a beautiful memoir moment. And thanks for sharing. We'll actually move on to our next segment. And this segment is going to be quite a different one. It's called a decision do-over. Looking back, is there a choice that you have made that you felt right at the time that it was absolutely the right thing to do? But then later on, you feel like that is something that I might want to change, and you have reflected on that further. So what is a decision like that you'd want to have a do-over and want to share your thought around that?
The first thing that comes to mind is when I had decided I was going to be a monk. I had so much fun in corporate America, or corporate global, not America. I say it was global. It was like everywhere, Europe, Asia, and the United States and South America. None of this nonsense about countries that's a whole different podcast. I'm not a believer in countries, for the record. So there I was, and I was doing strategic consulting. I was enjoying it. I was enjoying living in New York City, and I had really intense insomnia after a while. And I discovered meditation, and then meditation helped me to sleep again. And because I felt in love with meditation, and I have this kind of A-type personality, then meditation became everything. And so I started to disconnect from friends. I started to let go of hobbies. I started to basically bring all of my life into retreat monastic-like settings. And I thought at the time, and I'm not saying everybody that's in that setting has that motivation, not at all. That was my motivation. So this is probably why if I'd ever interviewed for being a monk, the abbot would have thrown me out, because they often screen you beforehand and saying, do you have any unfinished business? Well, I had lots of unfinished business. But my fantasy was, if I meditate hard enough, I will get to a place of the infinite, the absolute beingness, and therefore I don't have to deal with the rest of life. And so if I could do that over, I would still do the meditation. I still would go in those retreats. And at the same time, engage intensely with the rest of this experience. It took me about 4 years to get to that insight. And it didn't happen by myself, because the coach I worked with at the time said, when I said, well, I think I should really take this monastic life seriously. And she said, so what are you running away from now? And what I was running away from was my fear of other people. Cloister walls would be a great fortress against that. My fear from my less than pure feelings. For example, I discovered I was gay. That wasn't pure in my previous understanding of humans. Now I think that's weird. I'm married to an African-American man. My interest in helping organizations be successful, even my interest in creating abundance or wealth. All these things felt quote unquote wrong, and I started to engage with that later differently. I'm saying that now because that decision still has their echoes in my mind. Part of me is still fascinated with the end point. So I like to go to the top of the mountain, or, to get to the perfect answer, or in the workshop have the perfect experience. These are things I have to watch out for.
So that is the decision that you're talking about. So if you're doing it over, how would you do it over?
Well, I would do the meditation, do the retreats, and also do this work of inquiry, like in my own belief systems, more fiercely. Like, what belief systems do I have about these things that I'd say don't fit in the cloister walls or in my pseudo-sacred experience? And not waiting for the insight to happen, but actually experience them. Go and have a relationship. Go and pursue your dream for building this business or whatever it was at the time. Yeah.
Even when you're describing this, and I want to make sure that I understand the way you're at least using the language, it feels very causal or analytical, inquiring, exploring, and then all of it. Whereas inquiring and then thinking about here's what I'm trying to explore is already having a thought. Whereas in the context of meditation, in some ways, calming down, let me just be in the now and experience and then see what happens. And allowing yourself the space to explore, I think, is where you were leaning on eventually. So that's what you're saying. I'd go back into that decision, which was a pivotal one because you're seeing echoes and then let itself unravel or unwrap the gift slowly over time.
Yeah. And there's much more playfulness in it, right? My husband loves playing games. And at first I was like, games, that seems very not spiritual to me. I need to be meditating and looking in the mountaintops and being hiking. And I've learned so much about reality from playing games. You know, when I work with client teams, it's so much fun to have fun with the conscious and the unconscious pattern. And we laugh about it. So by engaging more fully and not having to have special exercise to have a special experience, which I used to do more in the past, more like, okay, so what are we working on right now? What does that person think about this person? Let's take a look at that. Okay, what's here, right? So it's become less formulaic and more just being in life.
Yeah, as a musician, it tends to be like, let's go jam compared to here's what we are going to be playing in this manner and here's your part. And it's not either or. Both of them add value and they're both important given what you're trying to do. And even in the jam scenario, people are still having their rules within which they play, but yet there's so much freedom to explore and create something that none of them individually would have thought about that comes out. I think you're venturing into that as part of your decision do-over experience. And thank you for that.
Yes, I think it's a great question. Decision do-over. I'm going to play with that. Decision do-over. And without, Pradeep, without a sense of guilt, because when he first said that, my old trigger was like, oh, what did I do wrong? Now I need to repent and make it all. No, it's more playful. Like, oh, man, let's put a different chip in this time.
Yeah. Here's the next segment. Our next segment is going to be called Vision Venture. What's a future that you're working towards? Maybe it's yourself, your work, or even outwards how leadership should show up in the world that you're beginning to explore. So what's your vision venture that you'd want to share with us?
One that comes to mind is called CQ. So in the beginning of the pandemic, which is now about 5 years ago, I was sitting behind this desk from which I'm speaking, slightly different location. And I travel a lot. And so suddenly I wasn't traveling and I was asking myself, what is it that I want to dedicate these next decades to? And what came to me is what I see in my working on myself and working with leaders and teams is that it seems to be about connectedness, how deeply we connected with ourselves, with our truth, with our own 2 feet, with each other, and with our purpose, or in one word, with reality. And self, other, and purpose are placeholders for that, you could say. Or to even make it shorter, how deeply am I connected to the wisdom that's within all of us? And my vision is that CQ becomes as much a leadership orientation as IQ and EQ, intelligence for emotions, is. That leaders and teams that are already getting better, not all the time, and sometimes we see a regress in that, especially these days with more intensity and stress in some areas. Regulating emotions, not judging each other as much, not projecting our own unfinished business on each other. That's very good EQ skills. And yet there's a deeper wisdom that underlies that. And I'd like people to orient towards that. So I'd like to walk into a conversation or a chat somewhere where somebody talks to me without knowing who I am. Yeah, I'm really working on CQ these days because it's elemental. And so as part of that, I'm writing a new book called The Connectedness Quotient. I'm doing talks and things like that. And that lifts me up. I have a curiosity about how I'll be called to be an instrument of that in our society. I became a US citizen about a month ago, and I did that with trepidation, given where we are currently are. And I did it because I've lived there for 30 years, and I decided I want to become a total part of this group of people and become part of its evolution, totally. And a lot of evolution is needed. With doing that, I made an energetic commitment. That's really what I swore allegiance to when I was asked to swear allegiance, to help the evolution of this particular group of people, not at the exclusion of other groups of people.
World of CQ, which is going to be like an elemental discussion that we bring in and we have a conversation. That's a great vision to have for us to that your venture that you're working on. And congratulations on being an American citizen now. Again, I completely understood the trepidation. In this context, I know we are recording this in 2025 summer, half a year since new president in place, and then a whole lot of other things moving on. It feels odd to say welcome to America because you've been here for 3 decades, but welcome to being an American for sure.
I like to say U.S. citizen because to me, American means Latin America and North America. So
That's right.
thank you for that. And this goes back to the open half circle. I used to be very convinced that I had the answer. I don't. And part of what I envision to inspire is that more and more people are willing and courageous to admit that we don't know how to address the current intractable challenges of our time, which are tremendous. And I don't see any political party or political leader having the answers. And most people seem to pretend that they do. And I think that's part of where our big challenge is.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good lead into our next segment. It's called Puzzle Point. What is a puzzle point that you want to open up and then talk us through? Like something that could be a tension, an idea that you're sitting on, something that's not an obvious solution that you want to describe, and then start to show us the different dimensions of what is the puzzle point you want to bring to us to describe. And
yeah, it would be how to help corporations be part of the solution to our current societal issues. And our current societal issues, I see increasing polarization, increasing division between rich and poor, and the really negative impact on our natural environment and climate change, which leads to social unrest and all these other things combined to that. So a little question.
there's so many ways in which you can start to piece that and understand it. But you're bringing in organizations which are driven in a certain way, like they're market driven, they're economics driven, but you're bringing them in terms of a socio-political outcome based, an instrument for solving a socio-political solution as well. Like, how are you thinking that through? Like, that requires a lot of transformation at the leadership and even alignment level for the firm, the organization itself. So how are you thinking through that vision? And then if you already started to work on that, well, how's the reception for that, like, or traction that you're getting for that puzzle?
Well, I talk about this always without talking about it. And sometimes I talk about it completely directly. So I don't talk about it because I always work on helping people to evolve their connectedness with themselves, each other, and their purpose. And invariably, as we go into that journey, we become wiser, more compassionate, more caring, and more sensitive, intimate with all of reality, which means as a leader, I can no longer just do the blinders on and do just it starts with not just my little department. It has to be other departments together, silos. Then it starts to become organization. But then quickly it becomes, is this really helpful for the customer? Really? We're trying to sell these extra widgets. Is that really what they need? What do they really need? Oh, and then there's other stakeholders that are involved. So it's like when I'm sitting with people in a space of, let's be truthful, those questions start to naturally percolate. Now you could say, that is my cowardly way, judgment to myself, on working with this. That's basically the hypothesis. It's an inside-out job. Like if all 8.2 billion people here were enlightened, free, totally resting as the is, and I'm not doing a good job describing what that might be, we're free. And so we're going to make very different decisions. And our system would naturally have to change because even the people that hold are most to gain in the continuation of the system would also change their mind. It's like, okay, well, yeah, we're going to change this. That's a very slow road. A more assertive road is to call it for what it is. And I think it's also knowing your rightful place. So it's not working with an organization to say, you're going to solve all of our problems. No. It's saying, just like a person, and you taught me this once, Pradeep, your past always becomes somebody else's future. So if an organization manages to make even a little bit more balanced contributions to their community, to their employees, to their stakeholders, it creates positive energy, it creates brand, and it starts to catch on. So that can become a flywheel through which a person that is a systems thinker or a politician or an economist might say, you have to work on evolving our system of capitalism, which leads us to this place and basically encourages us to go more deeply into this. And I tend to agree with them. And I see at this moment that my rightful place is to do the inside out movement, where I'm hoping that other people are taking care of other parts. And it may not work, and that's just how it will be.
I mean, using a capitalism to start driving this change, like I'm a big fan of that if we can solve for it, because it is a machine that has been primed for so long and it works in so many ways. It's extremely powerful. It is something that requires us to do a lot of effort work. And I think that's why this is on puzzle point for us to discuss this. This is something that it's going to take some time. And I do think this lines up with your vision venture thought around CQ in terms of a longer term basis. It's like parallel rows, but I think it's going towards similar outcomes for connectedness. And even you were talking about when people are lighter, this will feel right. So we don't have the answers yet, but this is something that you're committing to and engaging us and then saying we have to do this work. And I don't think it's just you, right? This is a team. You need others to get on this and then do their thing to see this come up.
Yeah. And I see many people in this question. Like I see the younger generations, consciously or unconsciously, many of them engaging in this question. The way that got us here won't get us there. So what is that? And I think many people are in that inquiry. And I'm just one of them that happens to be interested and maybe have something to contribute.
And I think we should move on to our next segment. This segment is our last one. It's called Game Break. So the first one, intuition or analysis?
Intuition.
Trust or control?
Trust.
Dismantle or reframe?
Dismantle.
Do you want to go a bit deeper on that one?
Yeah. You see, Pradeep, we can be very smart and create another nice. And framing is very important, as you and I know, and as people know. Framing is important. It sets the context. It's, I don't need to explain. Very powerful. I think as a Western culture, a Western-dominated culture, we've gotten very heady, and we can think ourselves out of anything while we don't do anything about it, right? So people are living paycheck to paycheck. AI is changing things very rapidly. Like it's reframing our reality very rapidly, dismantling many things rapidly. So I think I like dismantling because it has a more decisive quality to it. Decisive, I think the root of it is also shedding something. So I think we're living in a time in 2025 where we need to become very comfortable with dismantling a lot of our beliefs, our habits, our ways of working, our ways of interacting, and not just say, oh, it's a time of transition. Just be comfortable with discomfort. That's nice.
So I have two more for this or that. Feedback or silence?
Silence.
Structure or spontaneity?
Spontaneity.
And any of those you want to go a bit deeper and explain beyond that?
Okay. That's quite similar. Silence has a spontaneity to it. I do believe feedback is important. I do believe structure is important. When we get really, really, really still, we know, not from an ego or arrogant part, but we can know whether we're honest, whether we're really being of service, whether we're really being in the right relationship, whether we're really contributing, or whether we're doing this for ego ways. And we can be honest about that, whether we've been really respectful. So feedback to me is a training wheel. I sometimes go to silent retreats that are 10 days. I'm just quiet and I learn so much. And then nobody says a thing to me. Now, feedback is also important because part of me is carefully cloistered. And I use that word intentionally. Like, nope, don't go there. Don't do it. So there.
Awesome. And that was this or that. Hilke, thank you for your time on the Stories and Wisdom podcast and reminding us that leadership isn't just what we do, it's about what we're willing to face in ourselves. I know you've written a book in that space, but also all of the conversation we've had throughout, like it's definitely leaning in that. And before we wrap, where can listeners find you? What's the best way to engage with your work?
Go to my website or my LinkedIn. Both is Hilke Faber, HYLKE FABER. You'll find me there. Or pick up a copy of Taming Your Crocodiles. I think those would be great things.
Brilliant. And thank you once again for being on the Stories and Wisdom podcast. For everybody listening, we'll be back next week, different guest, same big questions. Thank you, Hilke, for being on the Stories and Wisdom podcast.
It's been an honor and pleasure. Thank you, Pradeep.
Playfulness and curiosity.
This new superpower called
They're
persuasion.
the rules of the world, and then here's the rules for us.
Real deep pink.
That was a very different level of inequity.
What does rich mean?